everything around, so the wrong side.
I moved everything around?
I moved everything around.
Oh.
I've got...
Okay.
But I'm in the process of changing. I'm now upstairs. So I am out of the basement. I've got the my son's room since he's moved off to California. This is my office now. So I've got 4 monitors here. I've got 4 monitors here. So I'm kind of juggling them around. When I keep looking to my left, I've got a bandwidth meter, which lets me know if we're running into problems. And then I have our recording software over there. And YouTube. So... And we're actually live. I didn't think we were live. It went live on us. So let's fade. And here we go. Scuba Obsessed, the weekly podcast. We talk about all things scuba diving, from cool new gear to places to dive and scuba to news. Scuba Obsessed episode 551 is recorded live October 13th, 2021. Wait, no, 2022. Gosh, I lost a year somewhere. Welcome back to Scuba Obsessed. I'm Darren Gilson coming to you from Southwest Michigan. Joining this week, we have Jim Scholz. How are you doing today, Jim?
I am doing just fine, Darren. How are you?
I am doing great. It's late. I'm tired, but I think we've pulled it together. Just sometimes I wonder. You gotta dig out of the basement. So, but the weather's been great. Other than a little bit of wind and a little cool. This is my time of year. I like this fall weather.
Yeah, we got some cool weather coming in, but it has been nice.
Yeah, the worst thing now is we're starting to get leaves in the river, so you got to do a little bit more digging around to find any of the bottles in your river dives.
Talking to some divers who are down between Niles and State Line today, and they were saying they had 30 feet of visibility.
30 feet? Really?
Yeah, 30 feet in the river.
Wow. I'm trying to think the best I've seen in a river. Maybe in a bright sunny day at high noon, maybe 20, but I've never seen 30.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, because I want to say it was a drift dive that we were doing was probably when I saw that 20. We were there by the Wonderland Cinema. And I think we may have had it. But yeah, nice sandy bottom and bright day. But 30, that's amazing. That goes to say that there was probably hadn't rained in a while. And nice steady currents. Yeah. It's been a while since we've talked. You've been getting a lot of diving in, or?
Not a whole lot. I've had some back problems, but I got worked around it. And I did quite a bit of diving up north when I went to the Straits beginning of August. And then got wet a couple times so far in September. So.
Yeah. Well, you're doing better than I have. I have not been able to get in. I have just, for a variety of reasons, not been able to fit it in the schedule. But I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see I'll eventually be able to get a dive in. It's been crazy.
Hopefully you'll get one in before the ice forms.
I hope so. Yeah, I need to. Uh, yeah, I certainly miss it. So before we get in the news, what do you think is the next dive that everybody's got on their list as we hit here the end of October?
Probably the river, or I'm sure there are a lot of people who will be doing pumpkin carving underwater.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I can see that happening. Yeah. Great Lakes Wrecking Crew, have they had their fall dive yet?
Yes, they had the meet and greet last weekend.
Last weekend. Okay. I knew it was.
Last weekend. Yeah, they had really good weather for it.
Mm-hmm.
I know Bob went for 4 days. He went up on Thursday and came home on Sunday. And I know some other local divers made it out there for part of the day on Saturday. I had planned to go, but had some other things come up on Saturday, so I didn't get a chance to get out there.
Yeah. And I need to talk to Bob. I wonder how, talk to somebody who's at Gilboa since they've had the ownership change. I was wondering how that was going along.
From what I understand, they've made some very significant improvements, and everyone seems to be pretty happy with new management.
Excellent. I mean, that's always what you want to hear. You want to hear that things get better. I mean, it's always been a great spot to go diving, but I know there was a desire for some improved facilities. So let's go ahead and jump right on into the news. Let's see, the first article we have up is actually a recall. 1,350 Scuba Buoyancy compensators with low pressure inflator hose from Cressy Sub USA have been recalled. Defective metal fitting on the inflator hose can cause airflow restrictions and failure to inflate or improper inflation of the BCD, posing a drowning hazard to the user. No incidents have been reported. The item was sold by Cressy authorized dealers nationwide from March 2022 through August 2022 for between $250 and $1,200 for the fully assembled BCD. And in the article, so in the show notes, we got links to this recall. And it was the Petrol, Quartz, Start Pro, Aqua Ride, Travel Light, Commander Evolution, Scorpion, and only inflator hoses with the serial number 007/22 or 01922 or 3522 stamped on the metal fittings that attaches to BCD are included in the recall. So fairly specific and fairly recent.
Yeah. That's glad they caught it that quickly.
Yeah.
Sounds like 2 or 3 batches of hoses with potential bad fittings. So just a matter, I imagine, of just swapping out the hose.
Yeah. And it's nice that it looks like they were keeping good enough records where they're able to figure out and narrow it down to the specific batches that were involved with the recall. So
that's good.
Yeah. So a nice small number. So if you've bought one of those BCDs since that time, August of 2022, then you want to check it out. If you can't figure it out on your own, take it to your local dive shop and they'll certainly be able to help you. And next up, we have a scuba diver mom and son stranded in Fiji waters after a boat abandoned them. A Newcastle woman says Australian cruise company should have been better prepared prepared for adverse weather after scuba diving holiday in Fiji almost ended disaster, and the boat disappeared when Justin Clark and her sons Felix and Max surfaced from an offshore dive in Fiji on August 14th. Their dive boat was nowhere to be seen. Diver with more than 30 years experience, Clark had looked in the afternoon dive on the offshore site called the Supermarket. Their dive party included English tourist and dive master who worked with VD Water Sports, a company subcontracted by Captain Cook Cruises. On the way to the dive site, the weather deteriorated, but the party pushed on. We traveled into an approaching storm and out in open waters what appeared to be a large channel about 20 kilometers from any land, Clark said. After regulation drift dive for about 40 minutes, she surfaced with her eldest son. No tender boat was visible on the surface. Swells were 2 meters. It was dark with gray clouds and high wind, Clark said. She said their dive master was next to surface. He was shocked at the event and stated that he had never happened in his 27 years of diving. The dive master advised the group to start swimming for an island they could see in a distance. I can't impress how concerned I was for everyone's health, sharks, and the sense of determination to reach the island in a calm manner, Clark said. She said their dive master was next to surface. He was shocked. After about 50 minutes, the dive master yelled the small boat was traveling towards the group. He advised the divers to inflate their surface marker buoys in a bid to be seen. The group's savior was a garbage collector who had been picking up rubbish in the ocean. He had noticed the tip of one of the divers' buoys. Soon after, the tender boat driver motored over to the group. He apologized, told me he was so scared that he had raved the captain that he had lost us. In a written response to ABC, Captain Cook Cruises explained that the tender boat had blown away from the dive site and that surface conditions made it difficult for the operator to follow the diver's bubbles. Justin and her sons were safely brought back to the ship owned by Captain Cook Cruises. So this was a cruise boat, and I'm assuming the one here. Can you see that in the photos?
Yes, they've showing up.
Yeah, so it was a tender for that boat. So the cruise boat must have been anchored, and then the tender must have been operating a charter. I said, I think it's really important operators are prepared for those situations. That may be rare, but can still occur.
I'm surprised it doesn't mention whether they had a diver, the dive master was towing a float or flag. I'm surprised if it would surprise me if they were not. Normally on a drift dive, the dive master keeps a float or flag so that you can determine where the group is. And if you have to surface early, then you've got a target to go to until the boat picks you up.
By the sounds of it, it didn't sound like, because he was following the bubbles. So you wouldn't necessarily have to be following the bubbles if you had the dive flag.
Right.
So they didn't have a dive flag on the dive. And I was a little surprised that he waited a while before having the surface marker buoy. He had him swim first. Yeah. So, I mean, it's great that it worked out the way it did, that everybody was picked up and made it back. Do they say they don't say how long everyone was in the water? You know, are we talking about a 10-minute situation, or was this longer than that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. And it's hard to tell with the photos. You know, trying to see if that's a dive flag or just a red flag. Yeah, a lot of these photos might not be representative of the actual dive. That's a tender there that they're showing, but I don't think I don't see any dive gear on that in that photo. So I wonder if that was a tender they were diving off of, though.
It looks like it would be a nice sized tender.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
Wide beam, flat bottom.
Yeah, it looks like you can walk out the bow. Probably pulls up to the boat and they walk right on out. So is that a platform in the back between the dual outboards? It looks like there's a buoy in it, or a
looks like there's
life
something
ring.
there. Yeah.
I mean, that's nice. I wouldn't mind having one of those. That'd be good. So glad it worked out, but it's one of those things you almost need to ask. I mean, how do you approach that subject? You know, what's your plans if you don't pick me up? You hate to have that conversation, but you
Well,
almost need to.
there are personal AIS systems that you can get for diving in open water that will let you transmit electronically your position. It's not like an EPIRB that goes to a satellite. These are basically AIS that make you look just like send the same signal a boat would send out or a location um, on the water.
Yeah, are these the ones where they're kind of like in a case, and you can flip up the top and activate it?
Yeah, you flip up the top and then extend the antenna,
Mm-hmm.
and it's smaller than a pack of cigarettes,
Okay.
and you can just transmit your position, or you can transmit an automated SOS. So it has two modes.
Okay. So a nice backup. I mean, it kind of takes a little bit into your own hands as a nice fail safe in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know my son who's gotten into mountain climbing recently, or I say mountain climbing, I just mountain hiking. He's run into a situation where that's what he's bought something similar to that, but for hiking.
Hmm.
They had a situation where they had one of his friends he was climbing with had a heart condition that they weren't aware of, and while they were up at altitude, his heart rate got ridiculously high, and so they had to kind of separate and go down so they get help up to him and all sorts of that, and they just everything went well and he's fine, but they've now invested so that way instead of splitting up, they could call help and get it back up there.
Yeah.
Okay, next article we have on the list is scuba diving participation rates have plummeted. This is an article from deeperblue.com. That even though water sports overall had increased in U.S. participation rates during 2021, the second year of the COVID-19 panic, scuba diving participation decreased by 8.8% from 2019 to 2021. Darcy Kurian, who writes the Scubanomics column on medium.com, cites those numbers from survey done by Sports and Fitness Industry Association. He says for more than a decade, scuba diving is continuously losing ground year after year, going, for instance, from 3.1 million participants in 2016 to 2.7 in 2019, pre-pandemic, and only 2.5 million in 2021, which was the second year of the pandemic. He noted that small participation jumped by core divers during 2020. That number decreased the following year. He posts the dive industry is simply not satisfying today's consumers. He says it's time to stop pretending we're innovating because we've moved a few commas in the scuba diving textbook or changed color of the regulator, be redesigned from scratch. We're not in the 1980s anymore. And in there they have a link to his full article.
That's interesting because locally I've seen more people coming into the shop interested in getting back into diving. Um, Former divers or inactive divers trying to get back and do more. I guess it may depend on where you are and what your target audience is, the demographics.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it could, where are these numbers being captured from? I mean, how do they get that? Is it people? I mean, how would you know? I mean, nobody knows when I go diving other than I talk about it on air.
Yeah.
But would that?
Well, it came from the Sports and Fitness Industry Association. That's not what I would consider a true dive industry. It's much broader industry than diving. So
Yeah.
They would be more interested in seeing what a dive specific survey might disclose.
Yeah. I wonder if Dan has any numbers like that. It seemed like they might be a good source. And maybe just for actuarial numbers, since they do provide insurance, that they might do some sort of surveys to figure out how active people
Yeah,
are.
or DEMA.
Yeah, DEMA, diving equipment manufacturers, have something. Then signs of a shipwreck appear at Sleeping Bear Dunes. This is in our own backyard here, Leelanau County, Michigan, which is on Lake Michigan, but a little bit farther north. Lake Michigan is so dynamic, the sands are constantly coming and going, said Sleeping Bear Park Ranger Meredith, was it Broman? It's always interesting to see, well, hey, they don't see the part last time it was uncovered, and hey, now it's the only part that can be seen. She's surprised she's getting emails and calls about the recent resurface near Bear Lake, near Bar Lake. She's very familiar with the history of the Manitoba Passage, both as the 1800 shipping travel corridor and inevitably darker side as well. One of those things that made the area so dangerous was at Scholz and the Sandy Shoal. So most of the shipwrecks happened because in bad weather storms, ships were driven onto the sandbars and literally the lake just pounded around them or pounded them apart. What survived the pounding often resurfaces and the waves pick it up and disappear just as quickly. The images show what the wreckage looked like 3 days ago. Would that probably be a part of the hull there? Maybe on the side?
More than likely. It looks like it's hull, but again, it's hard to tell. And as she says, it's different parts of the ship show up at different times and different years. We have that same issue with the Havana, the sand shifting, and that's a mile offshore.
Yeah. Well, and then we had, was it the Green Bay that actually moved?
Yes.
Yeah, Green Bay is a whole different spot. I can remember that always being the one where you could, walk right from the road down and see it. And now it's moved quite a bit.
It's much further south. It used to be north of the stream, and now it's south of the stream.
Mm-hmm. They said with no markings, we didn't have a positive ID of the wreck. Whether it has a name or not, it's still significant. The Park Service points out that oftentimes these shipwrecks were the final resting places of sailors on board. They ask that we treat them with respect. It has been recognized that these are important resources. They're protected not only as part of the park, but also protected by the state of Michigan. They shouldn't take anything. Again, these shipwrecks are protected. They're an important part of the history. It's important that we allow other people to see them. So leave them be, enjoy them, take pictures if you like. Don't take anything off them. There may be educated guess what the vessel is, but nothing has been confirmed. Again, this time of year, the shoreline shipwrecks can appear and disappear on a daily basis based on the weather. Yeah, we had the winds been gusting and ripping around here, so I would not be surprised to see some ice surfs.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one that we have in the list, a shipwreck has been found in Lake Superior. Was a 292-foot barge that collided with a vessel during a storm. Great Lake Shipwreck Historical Society announced the exciting new find Wednesday after its discovery. The 292-foot whaleback vessel, Barge 129 as it was called, was found along 8 other wrecks last year. The sunken ship was found 35 miles off Vermilion Point, which is on the east side of the Upper Peninsula near Sault Ste. Marie. According to the wreckage, the barge sank 120 years ago while in tow of a steamer. It is loaded with iron ore when a powerful October storm rolled through, as is the case with so many other strong winds and smashing waves of severe weather that hit the barge, snapped the tow line between the two vessels. After that, the barge 129 was left to the mercy of the storm, while the Manola turned around and attempted to reconnect the tow line. The wind and waves instead slammed both ships together. The port side of the anchor of the steamer or the anchor on the left side of the ship ripped into the right side of the barge. Right now I got the video playing. So the link to the article, Scott. This is looks like a video. Great Lakes, the GLSHS spot.
One of the comments I saw on a different website talked about how at this point, or not long after this, I believe, they started making pockets for the anchors to pull up into instead of them just hanging off the side of the ship like we commonly see on the schooners.
Okay.
They started making pockets to protect the outside of the anchor, so that if you came alongside a barge or came alongside another ship, the anchor wasn't protruding out and making holes in either your ship or the other ship.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, you kind of learn the hard way, unfortunately, but yeah, you learn from it. It's a nice video, so I recommend you take a look at their video right from the source. They got some discussions they're talking about as an ROV.
Must be pretty deep, because I don't see, all the photos are done with supplemental lighting, nothing from ambient light. And in Lake Superior and most of the Great Lakes, you can get video of ambient light, well over 200 feet deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, nice. Yeah, so the hole that it ripped was large enough that it began to sink. Its captain and crew quickly moved to launch the lifeboat. Eventually, the crew aboard the Manola helped the others onto the ship just as the whaleback sank to the bottom. And here's a nice photo we have on the screen of some whalebacks there. I've looked for this ship for so long because it's a whaleback. I was pretty excited. Marine Operation Director Daryl Ertl Jr. I couldn't wait to get the cameras on it. According to the release of the Shipwreck Society, the remote-controlled vehicle showed quite a bit of devastation to the ship. It's totally destroyed in the bottom. It's nowhere near intact. It's at least 4 to 5 big pieces, thousands of little pieces. It just disintegrated. Considering how deep it is, that's probably happened right when it went down.
Yeah, it looked like it, got bent in half and almost snapped in half, or into multiple pieces when it hit the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. Did they say how long it was? How many feet?
I don't believe it did.
292 feet. So that's a pretty decent size. Yeah. So 292 feet.
It's almost the length of a football field.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what it kind of looks like in these photos too. And part of it was the structural shape, that whaleback design. Probably once you harm that integrity, and that probably was the
iron ore. Yeah.
Iron ore. Yeah. You got a shifting weight, and then you probably got some air pockets forming. Yeah. It's a fascinating boat. It's like, it must not have been a great long-term design, because there's nothing like that today. And they came out of this pretty soon. Whalebacks are just a narrow period in time. And they went light years, because they went from these to, because we've got some What are some of the oldest cargo ships on the Great Lakes? There are some that were approaching 100, weren't they?
Yeah, you've got they just last week they were towing the Crapo, which had been the oldest uh, active steamer. And it was still a steamer
Mm-hmm.
on the Great Lakes, and that was being towed into Ontario to be scrapped. And its sister ship, the Alpina, still is running. I think the Alpina is like 83 years old, and the Crapo was close to 100. And the Alpina was just in St. Joe last week.
Yeah. Yeah. So these they ran for a while, but it seemed like once they got to the new design, that's held up pretty well. And then we just recently had the newest cargo hauler on the Great Lakes was commissioned this year and ran.
Yes, the first one built in I think 80 years.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite that long, but it was quite a while. I actually, when I was up Straits of Mackinac, beginning of August, we took a ride into the UP and got some photos of that as it was loading up at a sand plant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because now with the self unloading and all the automation they have in, we must be at a point in time where it makes sense. I mean, energy wise, I mean it's hard to beat ship traffic for dollar per ton.
I saw something last week that a bulk ore carrier, basically a bulk ore carrier, could deliver ore from like Duluth to Detroit for the cost of about $1 a ton.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you're hauling, you can't beat that any other way. I mean, you're not going to get that same. I mean, train would probably be the next best, and that'd be orders of magnitude worse. And then truck or plane. I mean, we're used to plane for a lot of stuff, but yeah, the bulk. And that's the strength of the Great Lakes, is just that we have this water highway and get things to move. Well, that does it for Scuba in the news. We talked a little bit about it diving beforehand, some of the dives going on. Jim, did you have anything you want to talk about? Anything that comes up on mind? I appreciate you filling in for Mac on short notice. So.
Oh, no problem. No problem. It's nice to be back. I've missed being on and just been very busy through the summer months trying to work outside as late as I can and do more things. So, no, I guess the only thing, if someone is interested in doing some underwater pumpkin carving for Halloween, many clubs and shops are sponsoring those pumpkin carving events. And a couple of tricks with that, or tips, is take a plastic bag with you, and when you cut the top out of the pumpkin and pull out the guts, do it in the plastic bag if you can, instead of spilling those guts all over everywhere, because if there's any fish, you're going to attract them. Plus, all that pumpkin guts floating around in the water can really mess up the visibility. Second tip is take a couple of extra weights, 5-pound weights or so, because you'd be amazed how buoyant an empty pumpkin is.
So, because that's what I've heard. I've never done an underwater pumpkin, and I don't know why. I don't know why I've never done one of the contests. I've dove in October plenty of times, so that could happen. Just haven't done it.
So the water is cooling down in our area. I'm sure it is in most of North America. The leaves are falling. My yard's just about all covered now. So if you're south of us, fall is definitely on its way.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're north of us, you've probably already seen some snow flurries.
See, I think I'm protected a little bit by the lake here because my leaves just a couple days ago started to turn. And today you could see the bottom leaves and it's kind of moving up the trees, just a little bit of color. But the wind was howling like crazy, but there's not a lot of leaves in the ground. But that makes me
And
think about a week.
I'm probably what, 30 miles east of you and
Mm-hmm.
maybe 10, 15 miles north as
Yeah.
crow would fly.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like it'd be
And
that much of a atmosphere change, but
yeah, but you're closer to the lake, so
yeah.
you're down in that wine country.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Trying to think of what else we have to cover. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We did the experiment this year with YouTube. Let us know how you like that. You can reach us on Twitter at Scuba Obsessed. We're on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Scuba Obsessed. Our website, www.scubaobsessed.com. I was trying to think if I had any really good jokes. See what I've got here. Do you have anything you want to plug before we get on out of here?
Well, support your local dive shops. They certainly need it, especially if the reports are true and fewer people are getting interested in scuba. It's easy to buy items off the internet, but they still haven't figured out a way to get air fills off the internet. And if the dive shops go away, you're going to have to travel a lot further or find different ways to fill your tanks. So support your local shops. Get out there, get wet, dive safely, help become an ambassador to make more people interested in diving and be a coach or a mentor. It's great when you can take a newbie and work with them, even if you're not an instructor, but just helping them build confidence and showing them tips and tricks that you've learned and watching them develop and turn into stronger and more active divers.
Certainly. Yeah, I agree. I'm working on getting some of my old dive buddies who haven't been diving in a long time. I'm trying to challenge them to get them back on the water as well. So hopefully we get a little bit of that activity. I mean, it's easier to take somebody who knew how to dive and has just fallen out of the habit than it is to get somebody new. And talk about diving.
It is.
Yeah, talk about your diving. Yep. Some people, I know that when people learn that I dive, it's their go-to question. Hey, have you gotten in the water lately? Have you found anything interesting? Where was your last dive at? Because many people are envious of divers. They've always wanted to do it, but for some reason haven't done it.
Mm-hmm.
When is a good time to get people into diving now that we're getting into the winter here in the northern part of the country? Is this a good time?
It's a mixed bag. Now with the water being comfortable and in October, you've got those warm days in the 70s in the middle of the day. The water temps are in the 60s or in the 50s. It's a lot more comfortable than it is, say, in March or April, when around here the water is still extremely cold, or, in March is when the ice comes off the lakes. Um, it's great to get students started in the spring because then you've got all summer long to get some experience, get some more dives in, and get that first season under your belt. But often we shock them by the water temps early in the spring. So the other problem we have is, now it's getting dark at 7 o'clock. And if you get out at work at 5 or 5:30, by the time you get to the dive site and get in the water, it's almost going to be a night dive. So the after work dives are extremely hard to do this time of year. So it's back to taking days off of work or doing it on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only disadvantage. We tried to do a discover scuba or break up the winter by about the middle of February, getting a pool day together and having new students experience diving for the first time with a discover scuba class, and then opening up the pool to all the experienced divers, certified divers, to come give your gear a midwinter rinse and start thinking about getting gear serviced or getting ready for that March, April, May time frame when people are hitting the water and getting ready for the summer season. So in our area, I tell people wetsuits are comfortable 3 months of the year. You can dive 5 to 6 months of the year. Dry suits are comfortable 10 months of the year, but you can dive all year long with a dry suit.
Yeah, that's very true. I know everybody tried to talk me into it until I finally did it, but now it's rare for me to do a wetsuit. Of course, I don't know if what I've got counts as a wetsuit anymore, but
Same with me. I'm either diving my dry suit or I'm diving a 3 mil.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about a dry suit is you just cut out the undergarments. So even in the summer, unless you're dry. I mean, you come up dry.
Yeah.
So
middle of the summer, if I'm doing a shallow dive, I still do it in the dry suit.
Yeah.
Just to stay dry, and you get so used to diving in that suit, it feels strange when you're not.
Yeah.
And you can, as you say, tailor your undergarments for the temperatures you're going to be in. If it's going to be a shallow dive above the thermocline, I'll use a light layer and maybe not use a hood or gloves.
Mm-hmm.
If it's going to be below the thermocline, either the first thermocline or the second thermocline, add another layer and put the gloves on when you hit that cold water.
Yep. I agree. Nothing beats diving comfortable.
Yeah.
When you're cold, it takes a little bit away from it. I used to talk myself into that cold was fine, but it's really not. You just have to prepare, have the right undergarments, the right gear, and you can dive all year round.
Yeah, you sure can. You sure can.
So I think it's that time. Don't really have any. Yeah. Yeah,
this is the part that I have missed the most about not being on.
Yeah.
The anticipation of the bad scuba joke.
Well, what we've had to do is I've had to increase them because they've been so bad to have any sort of quality. It just, have to do it. So I just call uncle when you've had enough, but I don't know how many I can handle. So considering that we're in October, I was thinking something with a holiday theme or a Halloween theme may make sense. So here we go.
Okay.
What did the ghost who crashed a Halloween party say? I'm here for the booze. What did the egotistical ghost say? If you've got it, haunt it. What do ghosts do to avoid dying in a car crash? They buckle their sheet belts. What's a ghost's favorite type of pie? Would be blueberry. And why did the police officer set the ghost free? He couldn't pin anything on him. Is that enough?
Do you have one more?
I do.
Well, one more.
Okay.
We'll do an encore. One more for the encore.
So, how do ghosts keep in shape? They exercise regularly.
Okay. Green pea soup.
So, on that note, go out there and get wet.
And stay safe. And remember, no pumpkins were harmed in the making of tonight's show.